We're now going to investigate how we can build packages in R. So we've been working with packages all along when we've been using R. So we've used things like Quandl, Finreport R, Moments, etc. And all the package is it's a series of functions that are nested under the one package or under the one library. Now, it's possible for us to create our own package in R, and that's what we're going to be doing in this tutorial. So specifically, we're going to be taking a few economics ratios, we're going to be defining functions for them, and we're going to be encompassing them into our own package, which we're going to call economics. So let's go ahead and see how we can build a package in R.
Here we're going to be discussing the concept of packages in R. So a package encompasses a series of functions under the one library. And packages are a cornerstone feature of how the R language works, because the reason we load packages is so that we have various functions already at our fingertips automatically, and we just compute our various calculations as opposed to having to load all the functions in the first instance. Now, we can use the pre-existing packages that are available to us, or we can indeed go ahead and create our own package with our own self-defined functions, and here's how we're going to do this. So let's load up the R console, and we're going to load in the following two libraries, DevTools and ROxygen2. So you can see that we're loading those in. And of course, if you don't already have those, then make sure to use install packages to install those too. So we're going to set our directory where we want our package to be located. So we're going to call this the economics package because we're going to be using this package to calculate various economics ratios. So as you can see in my comment here, this is where we will store all the functions that we will build into the package. So I'm just going to go ahead and define my directory. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create the economics package now that we have our directory set. And you can see here that we now have a folder called economics. And what we're going to do is under the R folder, we're going to create a new R script. And this is where we are going to include all of our functions. So all of our user-defined functions that we want to create. So we're going to go ahead and save that script under here, and we're going to call it economics.r. So here are the functions that we want to define. We see we have various inflation indices. First of all, Laspires, Pash, Fisher. We have the GDP deflator, money multiplier, rule of 70. And the purpose of our package is to have all these functions loaded in so that we don't have to calculate them ourselves, and rather all of the calculations are already loaded into the library for us. So we're going to go ahead and define our functions under our script. So let's start with Laspires. And the first thing we're doing before we do any calculations is we're just defining all of the variables in our function. And now that we've defined all of our variables, we're going to go ahead and write down the equation or the calculations that we want to do to calculate the Laspeyres index. And so as you can see, this is a fairly extensive equation, so having it in a function is a lot better because it saves us a lot of time. In other words, when we are calculating this within R, all we have to do is type in the values for the different variables that we have. We don't have to type this whole equation out and calculate it in its own right. So that's our function for Laspeyres, and we're now going to go ahead and type our function for Pasch. So again, very similar setup. We're loading in our variables and we are loading in the equation, only the calculations will be slightly different this time. So we're just going to go ahead and define our remaining few functions. And the last couple of functions are quite a bit shorter than the first two equations that we had. Okay, so now that we have defined all of our functions, we want to go back to our original script where we created the economics package, and we want to install this package into our existing list of packages, or into the R environment I should say. And once we've done that, we will then be able to run the functions in the package automatically, as you'll see. So let's go ahead and install the package first of all. So defining our directory again, using install economics, which is the name of our package, and then we're going to load the economics library just as if it were a standard library. So that's installing. So you can see that our economics library has been loaded. So what we're going to do is we're going to be conducting different calculations within R. So you can see with the table here, we're going to be using this to calculate the Laspires, Pasch, and Fisher indices. So we have different prices and different quantities for different periods, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to calculate the relevant indices within R. So let's go ahead and see how our calculations run. So you can see when we type in Laspires, a drop down comes automatically, and it'll tell us what particular value we should be inputting. So as you can see, we're inputting each value, and we come up with a calculation of 1.180556. So you can see that from the equation that we had initially put into our functions, our list of functions, R is now calculating on that automatically. So if we try the same for Pasch, again 1.327, and let's try a couple more. Again, you can see that we now have a calculation for the Fisher index. Let's try the money multiplier. And again, you can see that for each calculation we do, R is calculating based on the functions that we define, but because we've loaded the packages, we don't need to have each function there in the script itself to be able to calculate those functions. So if we go back into our economics folder, you'll see a file called description. And this is where we can edit the description for the particular package. So for example, I'm going to put in my name, Michael Grogan. You can put your email in there if you wish. You can edit the title, what the package does, and also a description of what the package does. So here I'm saying this is a package that is used to calculate economics ratios. And if you were to release this package open source, then you would need to give a description of what your package does as well as your author details, and this is where you would do it. So in this tutorial you've learned how to create a package from scratch within R, and the ways in which we can define different functions within our script for the package to be able to call on, and how this can greatly simplify different projects that you might be doing in R where you have many functions but you want a package encompassing all of those.